Welcome back to Intro Web 3223 here at Alfred State. We're going to be going over CSS today, the basics at least. So what I really want to cover is how to address things, pseudo classes, inheritance, and of course CSS weight and how things are actually applied. So let's get into that, and we got to start with, well, what is CSS? Stands for Cascading Style Sheets. All right. This allows for stylization in your HTML and your website in general. CSS is based on styling rules. Okay. So if we come down to our little example here, right here is the watch video. So we got red text and then an icon, and the only thing you have to do for that, at least for the red text, is display block. Here's some padding, color, and then text decoration of none. So CSS in general is really easy to pick up. There are little things when we start getting into the layout paradigms where it gets kind of annoying, but ultimately, logically, it's not particularly difficult. But it is fundamental to the web. Okay. So addressing CSS by IDs. So this is common when you need to address a particular thing. And this is also extremely efficient as well, because now we don't have to parse the entire DOM to go find a thing. So we'll get into that a little bit more when we start talking about tags. But yeah, if you want something to be very, very efficient, then this is the way to do it. So over here, let's bring your attention to the pound icon or the hashtag icon, depending on who you're talking to. All right, and then we're going to give this a background color of light gray. And then if I can bring your attention over here to the HTML, notice that one of the attributes here is ID, and then ID of form container. So this matches this, and then this is represented by this hashtag. Okay, so this is what I was talking about before when we were in the HTML section, where your attributes allow communication to or from CSS, and then from JavaScript. The HTML will never reach out to the CSS or the JavaScript if you're doing this correctly. If you're not doing it correctly, then you can do your own CSS here, but no, don't do that. All right. So this is the result of that. Here's the light gray background. All right. So CSS rule by class. So here's your class selector. All right. It's represented by a dot. And then if I bring your attention back over here to the attribute, here's a class with button. So button, and then class, and then that's represented by a dot. All right. So if we look at that, here's the result of this. And if I go back to show you what we actually applied, text decoration of none, padding of 1%, padding right and left of 2%, background color of dark sea green, and then border radius of 10. So that gives us this effect right here. Okay. So CSS rule by pseudo class. So before we get into how this is actually working, we need to talk about pseudo classes. A pseudo class is essentially state management. So this is state that's tracked by the browser, and based on whatever you're trying to do or what state this thing is in, right? Typically from user interaction, we can hook into that particular state to change something about that item based on the state. And hopefully that made sense. So here's a pseudo selector, and probably the most common one. So we have hover. Now for a pseudo selector, you need this colon. All right. And then whatever you're trying to address, and these are all going to be states. So hover in particular is going to be when I take this cursor and then I hover over, this is going to be a button. So when I hover over a button, is going to change to this green yellow. All right. And then we have a transition duration of half a second. And then we're going to have the preset transition type of ease in and out. All right. So here we go. The original button. When you hover over it, it's going to get this green background. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, so just like with the HTML, I do not have time to go over all the pseudo classes, but W3C has the entire list with what it actually does over here. Okay, this goes for all the other CSS styles as well. So if I can bring your attention over here to this nice long list of things that is in CSS. I don't have time to go over all these. I'll go over a lot of the basics that we use a lot, but I'm not going to go over things like CSS image gallery. Don't have time. Okay. So if you need something like this, definitely take the time and go through the CSS docs here and see what's available to you. Okay. So CSS rule by tag or element. So typically speaking, exactly what you see here is considered bad practice. Okay. The reason why we have this is because this is intended to be used in the combination with class and ID attributes, not just a tag on its own. And we'll get into an example of exactly what I mean by that here in a few minutes. But this is how you would do that. So there's no symbol or representation of anything because you're just representing a tag. So div, and then we're going to give it a color of violet. So color in this case is going to be the text color. So everything inside of this div, including this one and this one, right? Because everything inside of it is going to be a color of violet. Bang and bang. Okay, so this is a good way to get CSS bugs in terms of, okay, I'm going to apply this style and then, oh, we inherited a bunch of stuff that we didn't mean to. So, okay. Okay, dev view, if we've already went over this a little bit, F12 to open that up, you're going to be troubleshooting with that quite a bit. All right, CSS Inheritance. So just talked about this. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because that violet color that we applied to that div is getting overwritten. Okay. We also have some inheritance from the HTML tag. So if we have inherited from HTML, we have font size of 16 pixels. And then we have font family of Courier New. All right. And then, so this is getting overwritten right here. So anytime you see this cross out here, this is saying that we applied this and then it got overwritten somewhere else. Fortunately for us, it's right here. So color of black, overwritten this div right here. And that leads us into our next topic, which is CSS priorities and CSS weight. Okay, so this background of dark sea green, we're going to continue altering this button. Dark sea green, all right, we're going to overwrite this. And this is known as CSS scoring, okay? So as soon as I add another class here, this is going to turn into background color of dark blue, even though I have my background color of dark sea green down here. The way this works is that ID has the highest value, class is next, then your tags, all right? You can add a bunch of these together. All right. And then when you start stepping into particular structures, I need a little bit bigger structure to show you exactly what I mean here. You can get quite a bit of weight on something without using a alteration like important. Okay, and I'm not even going to show you that just because it's considered bad practice. It's a last resort. Hey, I don't know what's going on here, or we have this little project that we're showing to a client and we have 10 minutes to figure this out. Well, I actually don't have time to figure it out. I'm going to throw important on here and we're going to move on with life. All right, so that's why that tag is there. But generally speaking, you want to use CSS weight to make sure that everything is working as intended. So that's going to wrap it up for the actual not demonstration, but the presentation portion of this lecture here. And then we're going to be moving in to the demonstration portion here in just a second. So with that said, I will see you guys in the demonstration. See ya. All right, welcome back. We're going to be going over the CSS demonstration portion here, and we're not going to be doing any type of layout for this yet. That's going to be coming next. So what we're going to do here is make sure that you have the start folder if you're an Alpha State student here. If you are online viewing this through YouTube, go ahead and recreate these. Um, so we just have a handful of photos here. Okay, doesn't really matter what photos you use, it's going to be very similar to what we're trying to accomplish. So what we're going to do real quick is I'm going to show you the result that we're looking for. So we still have our check bikes, we still have our road bikes, we have a little indentation here, we have blue text here, we have rounded corners over here for the picture itself, blue text again, rounded corners, and then we got a little bit of padding down here. Okay, so we have a little bit of style going on here in terms of what we had from before. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to open with live server. So we're going to have both things here. Okay, so I'm also noticing that our font is significantly different on the one that is considered the endpoint. So let's start with that because that's going to be the easiest one. Now, I would like to bring your attention over to the left here, and with styles, we're going to activate that folder. We're going to add a new file, and this is going to be index.css. Okay, and before we get any farther, one of the mistakes that typically happens with our students is that they forget to add the link. So the CSS will actually work. Now I am noticing that I already have it here. All right, so I don't necessarily want that. I want to show you guys actually how to do this. So we have our link, like so, link, href. So here's our path to the CSS. So dot slash is going to say from this directory, all right, which is from this HTML. So from this directory, get used to using things like this because as soon as you put a project on a Linux server, things like this, where I can just do pictures, or I think it's called pictures. Yeah, it's pictures. What that's going to do, like if I do this forward slash, yeah, in Windows, it's going to work from where you have the folder. In Linux, this is root. So that's going to tell you, hey, from root, go ahead and do something. So get used to doing dot slash. Okay. We are going to go to styles and then index.css. Okay. And then we're going to do this. And for the people online that already know what's about to happen, good, but I want to demonstrate this for the students here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do this H1. We're going to get rid of this in a second. We're just trying to demonstrate something here. Okay, so I'm going to put in a color red. So if you remember from last time, color alters the text. H1 happens to be this. So this should turn red basically immediately. And it doesn't. Okay. Well, reason for this, actually, let's look up in the docs why this might be. So link tag, HTML. Okay, HTML link tag. Notice that we're at W3 Schools, a very good resource. And I'm also noticing this. Okay, so we're missing an attribute. We have our href here, all right? Okay, well, the path is right. We're missing this relational tag here. So the REL stands for relation or relational. And we have to tell the browser what we're actually linking. So this is a style sheet, and we're going to save that. We're going to come back over here and notice that our Trek Bikes is now red. All right. I don't want that. So bang, there's that. Okay. HTML tag. Now, this is one of the few exceptions in terms of using a tag for uh, applying styles. So there's a couple reasons for this. One, HTML in terms of the tag itself is right here and right there only. There's one. Okay. The other thing is that we actually want to inherit what I'm about to apply. So what I'm about to apply is a font family, and then we are going to do Arial. Okay, so that changed our font, and that looks the same. Okay, so we're doing pretty good there. The next big difference is this blue text right here for the Madone. Now, if I remember correctly, I added classes to these, and it's called subheader. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Subheader. Come over here. And if you remember correctly, a dot represents a class. Subheader. All right. Color. Oh, what type of blue is there? Yeah, let's go blue violet. It's a little off, but close enough. All right. So there's that. We got a color difference there. Let's do the cornering on the images. Okay. So, and this is one of the things I do want to point out. I am going to intentionally make it wrong so I can show you guys a little trick. So we need this class right here, which is class of bike image dot bike image. Here we go. And then we're going to do border radius. So border radius says, hey, go ahead and create a rounded corner using a radius for the image. Well, in this case, it's for the image, but for basically anything. And what I'm going to do is 3 pixels. I'm going to save that. Okay, and notice that the corner is rounded now. If I bring it up over here, and this is actually kind of close. So let's go ahead and make this ridiculous. There we go, 30 pixels. Now that is huge. That is huge. Unfortunately, I don't want that. So I'm going to open this up. And for the people that didn't catch that, I right clicked and then hit inspect on the image itself. And that's going to bring me to this image right here. Now, one of the things I can do is, well, one, I'm going to drag this up so I can actually see my CSS. Okay, let's open this up. And notice under bike image, our class right here is border radius. All right. Now, the reason why this matters is now I can alter the border radius in the browser to get it to the point where I actually wanted it. So let's go 5 pixels here. All right. Now, one of the problems of doing it like this is that it's not going to apply here in your CSS. You're going to have to come over and change it. Okay. So there's that. And this is a quicker way of doing it than inside of here, even though we got our live server, which isn't that bad. So if I was doing this purely through a file, then this would take a little bit longer. And depending on what type of project you're doing, sometimes that can be a deal breaker, just saving the file and refreshing and did it work or not, and so on and so forth, right? Animations tend to be the worst for that because the animations are so precise in terms of how you want that to animate, move. Okay, so there's that. We have our font. Yeah, we have our font, we have our color differences, we have our border radius. Okay, we're missing the padding on the bottom here. Okay, so this comes back to what I've been talking about up to this point in terms of, hey, we need to be able to address things logically. So here's a logical chunk right here. We have our check road container right here. We have another logical chunk and another logical chunk. Okay, so when we're trying to address content like this, we have our check road container and then we have body. All right, so what I am going to do for the sake of argument, all right, is I am going to add a class of nah, I won't add a class here. I'm going to address this ID. So copy this, copy, go back to our CSS ID, so hashtag check row container, and then we're going to do a padding bottom of, oh, let's go 10% here. There we go. I seen a little refresh, and notice that we have a good bit of padding here. And the reason why this is helpful is because you don't actually want your user staring at the very bottom of the phone or very bottom of the screen. It's typically uncomfortable. You want to bring that up a little bit. Okay, so the next thing that we need is this little spacing off to the left here. So we have a couple options. We could do padding again, or we could do margin. The difference is that padding makes whatever element that you're working with bigger. So if I actually come in here, because we did check road container, I'm going to inspect here. Okay, check road container. I'm going to make this the image itself bigger. So if I come over here and hover, notice the purple bar down in the bottom. Okay, so there's that. If I pull up my CSS again, and instead of padding bottom here, I do margin bottom. Okay, notice that it wasn't exactly a one-for-one the same, but I also can hover over this now, and now it's yellow, but the size of the container itself is the same. So if I come over here, we haven't dived into this too much, but this is what is known as the box model. So down here is your 48 pixels of margin, but inside of this little black bar here, which is labeled as border, that is the actual size of the element itself. So this 483 for the width is the actual size of the element, the height of the element, the padding, the border, and then the margin. Okay, so if you want to move something within a container and you don't want to make the container itself bigger, then you use margin. If you want to make the object bigger, then you use padding. Hopefully that was simple enough. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to make that smaller again. Okay, that's all the way over here. We got padding there. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's go ahead and handle the indentation. So the indentation, we want to apply to both this one and this one. So this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of tags being something to step in with, where you don't want to use the tag itself. So I am noticing that I have a class here, which I can address. For the sake of demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with check road container again. Okay, hashtag, and now I'm going to step into that. Now, By stepping in, I mean we are going to address from check road container down to div. Okay, and we're actually going to use that tag name. And the reason why this is okay versus just using div is because we know, well, the browser knows exactly where this check road container is, and then it only has to parse this little bit to get that operation done. So this is much more efficient than just saying, hey, all the divs in the DOM, let's go ahead and do this. All right. So there's that. Let's go back to CSS. Okay, we're going to use div, the tag, all right? And then we're going to use margin left. Let's go 5% here and then see what we get. All right, I say close enough. All right, so there's that. And then let's say later on, you notice that, hey, there's actually a class here. Why didn't I use that? Well, you still can. You just have to go back and change it. So instead of div now, we're going to use a class of byte container. And there we go. And now we have an example of having additional weight. So we have this ID plus the weight of the class. And then this margin left is reasonably unlikely to get overwritten for some reason. Okay, so if you feel as though this is important, this is a way to add more weight. So there's that. Let's see if we are missing anything. We got check road bikes. We did our color. We did that. We did the padding. I think we're done. So that is going to do it for the basics of CSS, of how to address things and how to move things around. Obviously, we're going to be going over this a lot more when we start doing layout paradigms. And then when we do the actual website portion where I pick a website and recreate it, then you'll see how the entire system works, where you use a lot of, well, I don't want to say a lot of guess and check, but a good bit of guess and check where you're just trying to get it just right to recreate a website. So with that said, that's going to do it for this one. The next is CSS Grid and Flexbox, which is fundamental to the course. You have to understand these, and it allows you to have a mobile responsive website. So I'll see you in that one later.